to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lucas, and I shall start. And you're kind of an incumbent, so I want to ask you a question in which you may give the challenge back to Congress. You're charged to make sure that people are not discriminated against based upon factors including genetics. I was once told to a fellow, a CEO, that when he has a candidate come to him as an applicant, he can request, and people have scoured their search history online. And so if they're searching for cystic fibrosis or for in vitro fertilization, as if to learn about it because it applies to them, the employer might make a decision not to hire on the idea that they are taking on a very expensive medical procedure, or maybe they have cystic fibrosis and they want to check. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Now, I think Congress is actually interested, will be interested in the coming months over issues of data brokers. So any thoughts about that, how we end up having, you tell me, you see how I'm framing this question. Do you have, how would you approach this as EEOC, or is this something that Congress needs to look at in particular on these issues?
Well, you know, we enforce GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, but I will say that I have found that it is not well understood by most employers or employees, and I do think the agency needs to do more education in that space. Congress has already led in this space and made clear that you cannot discriminate based on genetic information.
Genetic information, I don't know the law. Is that defined as somehow getting a download for 23andMe, or is that the ability to otherwise understand that somebody's genetic profile would include a propensity to a certain illness?
Any genetic information, I think, would be a part of that. So,
if the child, if a couple had a child with cystic fibrosis, and they were still in fertile years and might wish to have other children, would that be considered genetic information? Because I don't want to have the expense of covering a child who might need genetic therapy?
Yes, potentially. And in fact, we authorized one of the first lawsuits that we had brought in years during my time that I voted for and was proud to support, involving, I believe it was not cystic fibrosis, I believe it was related to a blood thinning disorder, in which the company was hiring employees. In this case, in the opposite, they intentionally sought to find employees who either had this disorder or their family members did, because they wanted to be able to sell those services to them, and then they entrapped them essentially, where they would, it was really terrible. So sometimes it can go both directions, but because the company was selling services to treat those individuals, they intentionally sought to hire people like that, but then would tie them.
Sounds like you have existing tools by which to address that.
We do, but I do think we do need to do a much better job of helping people understand.
If after looking at it you decide there's more tools that Congress should give you, I think there'd be a bipartisan interest in that.
I think there's a tremendous amount of bipartisan work, and I think that it's deeply unfortunate that sometimes the agency has been viewed as universally the playground of the left. There is so much good work that we can do across the aisle to ensure, again, I think something that is really central, equal opportunity for all.
I appreciate that.
I look forward to working with you.
Congressman, man, you got like a great background for this job. I'm just telling you that. I'm sitting there thinking, all of you do, but I'm just thinking, you know, except for your prejudice against seersucker, I just think you're a great guy.
Senator, coming from Long Island, seersucker gets a pass. It's once you get into the 5 boroughs, there's a problem.
You know, obviously, you have worked with law enforcement agencies on a state and local level. And so there's going to be a common goal between what our Department of Labor would be doing with local law enforcement as regards child labor, enforcement of immigration laws at labor places. How can, with a streamlined Department of Labor, can the OIG's office work, you tell me, with state and local law enforcement to better protect our workers, our people?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. I think one of the most important things that we need to do in the Office of the Inspector General is to begin to do a couple of things. First is to actually let these state and local law enforcement agencies know exactly what resources the Office of the Inspector General offers. Second, which I think is probably equally important and I think is not being done right now, you have departments, especially in communities where the child and human trafficking is a real issue. You have giant police departments who have groups and teams set up just for this issue, and they don't even realize that the Office of the Inspector General could be a helpful resource. So I think we need to embed the Office of the Inspector General into these offices throughout the country. If we do that, we can yield real results.
Appreciate that. I had questions for you too, but I'm out of time. Instead, I will go to Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.